9 dangers of eating only meat? That sounds alarming. Is that fear-mongering, or is this doctor's assessment correct? Let's find out. Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and welcome to my channel, where I review and debunk nutritional misinformation online. In this video, we're going to hear about a doctor, influential internet doctor's take on the carnivore diet and see what she says. Be sure to wait till the end where you get my final thoughts. Before we jump into today's video, I want to invite you to join my free course, Start Keto Right. If you're ready to lose weight, boost your energy, and really get results, this science-backed approach will guide you every step of the way. No guesswork, just a proven method to help you succeed on keto faster and feel amazing. Sign up now through the link in the description.
Do you follow the carnivore diet? The carnivore diet is a form of the keto diet. You've probably heard of that, but it's it definitely is more restrictive than sort of the general keto diet that we think of, okay? Carnivore diet, this is according to Harvard Health. What you can eat on it is meat, poultry, eggs, seafood, fish, some dairy, and water. And I'm sure that some sources have a little bit of a change in that. I mean, I'm sure depending on whose carnivore diet you follow, there may be a little bit of tweak to that, but that is according to Harvard Health. What you cannot eat on this diet is there's no veggies, no vegetables at all. There is no fruit at all. There are no grains, no legumes, beans, things like that, no seeds, no nuts, okay? None of that. As you can see, it's very restrictive.
Well, I think that's a pretty good assessment, or why not just say you've heard about plant-based diets? Carnivore is an animal-based diet. So you don't eat, on a plant-based diet, you don't eat any animal products. Often it's for ethical, socio-religious reasons. And on an animal-based diet, it typically is for health reasons, not these other reasons. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment. Now, the idea that it's restrictive is a matter of perspective. If you are finding that you're healthier by doing something and you like what you're having, it's not restrictive. So it depends on the person, of course. Some people find that it's not restrictive at all. Others do.
Keto is minimal carbs in general, okay? With the keto diet, you are allowed some carbs, like the traditional keto diet that we think of. This is the carnivore diet. It is a form of keto because there are no carbs. But in this diet, there's like 0 carbs, like 0.
Oh, that good emphasis there. Yeah, so the keto metabolism has been pretty well worked out. If you don't eat anything for 2 or 3 days, your body starts to burn its stored fat. Some of that stored fat turns into ketones and works where glucose used to be working. Some argue that that's our default metabolism, and when you eat carbs, it's actually changing you from the fat burning and keto metabolism to something unhealthy or less healthy. So it depends on your point of view, but it certainly is 0 carbs. Oh, well, if you've always had carbs and it seems normal and you're accustomed to that, it is a bit of a change. I agree.
Which I think is pretty remarkable. I have problems with this diet, as you can probably tell. I'm going to tell you 9 potential dangers of this diet. I want to know if you try this, if you use this, what have you. Let me just also say that a lot of people say that this diet does a lot of things for them, whether it's fixing acne, giving them energy, or what have you. And then, of course, when you get to keto diets, like this idea of, sort of having fewer carbs, what happens when you don't eat a lot of carbs is your body basically starts burning fat, okay?
Yeah, it starts to burn its own fat too if you're trying to lose weight. That's, I think, why the keto diet is best known for weight loss. The body starts burning its own fat. You're still eating protein. And yeah, on a keto diet, you might be able to have 20 or 30 total grams. And the method that I teach, always use total grams, not net grams, because that gives you more carbs and it's less likely to be keto for people, especially if you're using products that are out there. Keto bread, keto ice cream, these really aren't prescription strength level keto products.
And that's how ketones are developed. But also with that comes weight loss. A keto type of a diet will very likely cause you to lose weight. That is a fact. It's actually how the science works. I should also say that traditional keto diets have been used in certain medical conditions as treatments too. So I'm not knocking keto as a concept, but carnivore, remember, is a keto type, but it's more extreme.
So it's a subset of a keto diet and more extreme metabolically as well. So I'm not sure this is a bad thing yet. And then she mentioned the things that can improve that I've seen myself, the acne, the inflammatory and irritable bowel problems, the autoimmune issues that can improve. I haven't heard about anything bad yet. And she acknowledges that a keto diet has been studied with some carbs. Perhaps it's just a matter of time when the research will be garnered about an even lower carb diet. The research going back 25 years for me started with very high levels of carb, and then we've studied very low carb, and then perhaps as time goes on, we'll study carnivore. That would be a great direction to go in.
There's like zero carbs. I know I keep saying that, but okay. So let's get into some of the potential dangers of this carnivore diet, okay?
So I assume that if you're a carb eater and you're watching this, you kind of resonate. Oh my goodness, my fruit, my bread, how can I not live with that? So, but if you're not a carb eater, these things kind of seem almost trivial if your health has improved, if it's been a medical transformation, doesn't it? Let me know if you've had any positive or negative problems with a carnivore diet in the comments below.
Number one, when you're eating that much meat, the likelihood, I'm guessing, is that some of that meat may not be the healthiest. And with a lot of meat comes a higher diet in saturated fats. What do saturated fats do? They increase our bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol.
Oh no, so the old paradigm of saturated fat in the food is coming into play. So if you've watched my channel, you realize that there are many different ways to be healthy. You can eat plant-based, you can eat animal-based. The idea that saturated fat in the food is bad has been in the research world debunked for 10, 20 years. And it still remains in the clinical world, clinical organizations, but it's too bad that she's still worried. I don't want you to be worried about saturated fat and cholesterol levels on a low carb or keto or carnivore diet. We talk about the metabolic syndrome, which in the blood is triglyceride and HDL. In the rest of the body, it's the elevated waist circumference, the blood pressure elevation, the blood sugar elevation. So a keto carnivore diet targets the metabolic syndrome, not the old, saturated fat, LDL total. And so many doctors are still in that old paradigm. Dr. Jen is as well.
What does that mean? That means a potential increased risk of heart disease and all sort of obviously that high LDL often translates to high cholesterol, but a higher risk of heart disease, et cetera, and some of those risks that come along with it. Okay. So that is a major concern, is my patients, if they were trying this, getting an increase in saturated fat, which is not what we want.
Don't agree with that one.
Also, according to Harvard Health, the carnivore diet can increase your risk for kidney stones, gout, even osteoporosis, and very likely there are probably other things that can be, other risks of conditions with this.
So I think those are unsubstantiated claims. Certainly any type of dietary change, if you're going from carbs to no carbs, you're going from a typical American diet to even a vegan diet, if you have dehydration during the first transition phases, sure, you might get a kidney stone. And it's not that particular type of diet. It's actually the change process with the dehydration that can occur. Gout can happen early on, and after you get through that, the gout won't happen again, because it's the metabolic syndrome that causes the gout, not the foods. Of course, you have to just, talk to someone who understands this and get through that. Most people who have gout don't get a exacerbation, actually, when they change to this way of eating. And if you do, you just get it treated, but continue with the weight loss, because the weight loss will reduce and eliminate the gout.
The other thing too, I should say, and kind of along those lines, is when you're taking in a ton of protein, and I've seen this before in my practice. I did have a patient that was overdoing it on protein. This was years and years and years ago, and he really kind of shot out his kidneys for a while.
So can we be a little more precise? A ton of protein, really? 2,000 pounds? So, and then the anecdote from years ago. No, protein is rarely overconsumed, the amount, the grams, when you eat a keto or carnivore diet, because you eat less. So you don't try to eat the same caloric amount in just protein and fat. What happens is you end up eating less. So as a percentage of calorie intake, protein goes up, but as an amount of the protein generally doesn't go up. It could, and we all know people who are pounding protein shakes and powders for whatever reason. That's the unusual side of things. The science says that even elevated protein diets are not harmful for the kidneys. That's kind of the old myth. And with myth and prejudice, it's fascinating because there's a saying that no amount of data can overcome prejudice, because you already have made up your mind.
Okay. If you're taking in too much protein, it can actually potentially damage your kidneys. Now, of course, it depends on what people are choosing to eat on this carnivore diet. But remember, what I mentioned is really all you can eat. And the strictest form is when I say meat, poultry, eggs, seafood, fish, some dairy, water. So obviously, this would be the people who choose to be on sort of the more red meat heavy sort of spectrum, or the protein heavy spectrum, with those two particular issues. The fourth thing is, yes, we are on, restrictive diets are just hard to follow.
Well, that's not for everyone. So it's classic for a practitioner to think that because they have trouble doing it, that everyone must have trouble doing it. In my practice, I have people who say that it's actually very easy. They don't like cooking. They don't like worrying about things, worrying about the menu and all of that. So to each his own, right?
I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Diets in general tend to be hard to follow, okay? Imagine not just trying to stick to your regular diet, which just might be like, oh, hey, let's not eat cupcakes this week, but stick to a diet that really has no carbs at all. That means fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds and stuff like that. Grains, right? Those are usually major parts of our diet. It's hard to stick to. It's hard to keep up. I remember years ago, I tried like the regular keto diet. I was trying to lose some weight, and I said, okay, let me try keto. And with keto, that's sort of the classic kind, you can have some sugar, some carbs. I couldn't stick to it past like a day and a half. I just couldn't. It was way too restrictive for me.
So again, that's not true for everyone, but what I hear a little bit here in what she's talking about is the fact that the typical American diet, the foods with sugar, ultra-processed foods, the junk foods, are hard to stay away from. So when you hear diets are hard to follow, meaning something that doesn't include the typical American grocery store stuff, what's really going on is the tug of the foods that are addictive. And so no one can not smoke because they're smoking everywhere and we just all smoke. No, I mean, that's the way it was when I grew up. But now, because everyone's eating carbs and they're everywhere, it's just really hard to not eat carbs, meaning hard to follow a diet that doesn't have carbs in it. That could just be addiction.
The other thing is that there's a lot of people who just actually feel fuzzy in the head when they go on, number one, restrictive diets in general, but something like this, where, you're not taking in any carbs, you could really get kind of fuzzy in the head, not feeling yourself, not feeling right. And that's a big thing.
Well, I don't know. Show me the study.
Remember, you're not taking in grains and stuff like that. You're not getting a lot of fiber with a diet like this. And what does that mean if you're not getting fiber? It means you could be constipated and your bowels could really be kind of jacked up. And remember, fiber is not just good for constipation and bowel health. It's actually good for a lot of other things, okay?
So imagine my surprise when we found the data, actually studies showing that adding fiber caused constipation, didn't eliminate it. So there are some transitions. One common theme is when you go into keto adaptation, you might need some extra salt early on. If you have headache or fatigue, add some salt. You might get some transition or changes in the bowel movements as well. Going to the bathroom less often is not constipation, even though doctors on the internet will say it is, and you need to have a bowel movement every day. I don't think that really is true. And so fiber is not really an essential nutrient. You don't have to have it.
I know that many of you watching this video may be writing in the comments right now, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Carnivore is the best diet in the world. And then, I hear you. And I'm here to listen if that's how you feel. I hear you. But I also just want to say, I always say, like, everything in moderation. The reason why I say,
well, hang on. I guess she's not listening. I'm sorry. But if some people find it, moderation is not always the key. If there's an addiction, smoking, alcohol, you hit rock bottom, you need to avoid it forever. You can't moderate alcohol if you're an alcoholic. So I just don't agree with that idea, everything in moderation.
moving on to the last few, like, remember that this no fiber thing, no fruits, no veggies, no nuts and seeds, what are we missing out on here? We're missing out on a ton of nutrients, not just fiber, but antioxidants. We're missing out on vitamins. We're missing out on minerals. We're missing out on things that our body actually needs to function.
Well, that sounds good in theory, but it's actually not correct.
To function well. And what's interesting to me is that, I literally almost every other patient is asking me, well, what vitamins and nutrients do I need? Because oftentimes we think we need them, but then there's this other side where, if you're interested in the carnivore diet or other extreme diets, you could actually be, utilizing a diet that inhibits your ability to get nutrients. And this one, in my opinion, certainly would do that.
Well, that's fascinating because it's vegetables that actually inhibit nutrient absorption. That's interesting. That might have been just a turn on something that's a problem with eating vegetables and just blaming it on animal foods. I don't know where that came from.
The second to last thing I want to mention is sodium content, right? There's some sodium in some of these things, okay? And depending on what you're choosing to eat, again, a lot of this is going to depend on what the person chooses to eat, but there could be a high sodium content in what you're choosing. That, in addition, could increase your risk for high blood pressure and other sort of heart disease related types of conditions, which we don't want.
Well, so that's another old view, the idea that salt is necessarily bad and that it causes high blood pressure and heart, and it'll just happen like out of the blue. You can actually measure your blood pressure, and if someone has high blood pressure, I teach them a diet that has more sodium in it because they're not eating the carbs. Their body actually gets rid of sodium in water, and we measure the blood pressure. If someone has a blood pressure problem, it's not that you just avoid the idea, just you measure it and follow it, and typically it comes down, even though you're eating more salt, because you're losing weight and you're not having the carbs on a carnivore or a keto diet. So she just doesn't know that shift in metabolic function.
The environment is impacted by meat production, or sort of, meat production. Okay. We know that, and look this up. I'm not an environmentalist and I'm not a policy person or whatever, but I know enough to know that, increased meat production may increase greenhouse gas emissions and do so many other things, potentially negatively impacting, and not potentially negatively impacting our environment. That's something to kind of keep in mind.
So that didn't have anything to do with human, danger at the moment, but the climate. I think that's a legitimate concern, but I've seen it both ways. I've seen people argue that it's the monoculture of agriculture, that it's harming the environment and harming the planet and the climate. So I think the jury's out, although some people, again, have kind of prejudged and closed their minds. What if there were regenerative agriculture ways to keep the climate and the topsoil and support human and health? So look up regenerative agriculture if that's something that's still nagging you. That doesn't bother me anymore. Yeah, so you're watching an influencer who is a physician at a university, has done clinical research, and that does it's almost oxymoronic to have an influencer who is a scientist, and yet that's the world we're in. Always consider the source of information. I was not compelled by Dr. Jen to worry about the carnivore diet based on these claims, often prejudices. Let me know your thoughts down below. If you like, please like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on future content. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.